when you're running a company, you're pretty busy. And so you tend to only have one thing going at a time. There are some really prolific entrepreneurs who own, 5 or 10 assets. And they've got little teams or hubs or clusters of people running those assets. But that's uncommon. Whereas an investor, there's lots of people all over the world who want to invest in a business. They either want to invest in a business and take a passive stake, or they want to invest in a business to operate the business.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Sehgal show. Today, we are going to interview a really special guest on our show today. Someone who was once a customer of the world's largest marketplace to buy and sell online businesses named Flippa, and to later becoming the CEO. Now, prior to running the Flippa, he held leadership roles across multiple fast growth tech businesses across e commerce and SaaS. He leads the team as they build out a product empowering exit and ownership for business owners and entrepreneurs globally. Without any further ado, let's welcome Blake Hutchinson to our show today. Hey, welcome, Blake.
Hey, Sahil, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Good, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving your time. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I must say my virtual background's not quite as good as it should be, but I think we'll get by.
Yeah. Maybe you need a little green screen over there. It looks beautiful over there. But cool, no worries. So, Blake, thank you so much once again. And I'm going to start before the Flippa journey. So, all that started, I think it was in 2018, somewhere you started. So, what were you doing before starting the Flippa?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And again, thanks for having me on the show. Before Flippa, I was running a business called Luxury Escapes. So I was not the founder of that business, but I was running that business for the founder. And that was Australia's fastest growing online travel agency. Fun experience, because obviously when you're growing that fast, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of people to hire, and there's also a lot of success that you can celebrate. Often the funnest businesses to be in when they're growing that fast, despite all of the chaos.
Right. Okay. Well, was it more of a luxury holidays that you were doing? Okay.
Yeah, good question. So it was an online travel agency in the sense that customers went online and bought the travel experience from luxuryescapes.com. But yes, as you would expect from the name, what we were selling was packaged holidays, which were luxury in nature. So it was operating out of Australia, albeit it's truly global today. Really good business for anyone who's looking for a holiday, actually. But yes, selling luxury discounted holidays and selling up against Booking.com and Expedia, albeit the point of differentiation was that they were packaged with lots of inclusions, which people loved.
Right. Oh, great. And how did this whole transition happen then from luxury escape holidays and to digital service world?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I tend to think that business operators, CEOs, and founders are really well placed and better off when they have widespread knowledge across different businesses. They've worked in multiple different monetization models, and therefore can understand how different businesses work in different circumstances at different life stages. And so that's truly representative of my career background. So I've founded businesses, gone from 0 to 1. I've always worked in startups and growth businesses, representing founders on leadership teams and or directly reporting to them. And I've done that across the globe, albeit across different industries. So publishing, accounting, SaaS, of course, online travel and e-commerce, and now, of course, a marketplace. And so having used the marketplace as a customer to exit, or I should say, attempt to exit my own business, I was obviously familiar with the platform, and I was very appreciative of the dynamic nature of the platform, the fact that it had a global buyer base, the fact that entrepreneurs all over the world were using it to sell their businesses. So when I was approached by one of the board members to consider taking the CEO role, it was very much not just about the role. It was about the experience that entrepreneurs and online business owners go through when they consider selling, and empathizing with that experience. And so it came down to a few things. One, did I believe in the business and what the business was trying to achieve? And what the business is trying to achieve, ultimately the mission is to help people sell businesses, but really about becoming the investment bank for the 99%. So we want to provide a service offering powered by technology that is applicable and accessible to everyone around the world, regardless of the size of their online business, and giving them a pathway to sell and exit. So I empathized with that. And that's kind of a really big part of it. And then I really respected that there was a platform built out of Australia that was truly global, that didn't have a sales team, that didn't have a marketing function, and had grown organically and virally. And so those two factors, great platform, empathizing with the customer experience, drew me to the opportunity. And now I've been doing that for 6 years.
Wow, that's great. What were you trying to sell on Flippa when when you were a customer? I'm just curious to know.
So I had built a marketplace for specialty food suppliers. And so the specialty food suppliers could list on the marketplace, much like Etsy,
Uh-huh.
which is obviously, handmade craft goods,
Right.
etc., selling in a marketplace environment. This was the same, but for food providers and food producers. So they would build a shop front on top of our marketplace, and they would be able to sell to our database of customers. And we had 100,000 customers around Australia. We hadn't yet launched internationally. I had started that after moving back from San Francisco, and it was a good business, but we were too early. This is way before COVID. People weren't as familiar with shopping online. People would drive down to the local supermarket. They weren't as obsessed by local producers, or if they were, they would go and find them in the local retailer versus on a marketplace like mine. And so
Mm.
ultimately, I had a big database. We had a lot of content that was driving, the organic traffic to the marketplace. There was nearly $1 million in revenue. But ultimately, it wasn't a business that was going to go to the moon.
Mm.
It was difficult. Logistics were a nightmare, getting the products from each of these retailers into the hands of customers. And so I tried to sell that on Flippa. And it was interesting at the time because marketplaces are still quite rare companies.
Mm.
And so back then, Flippa was a really good marketplace for selling blogs and small apps. Now, of course,
Mm.
it's evolved substantially to represent, 5, 6, 7, and 8-figure business owners. But back then, it was difficult to find a buyer for a marketplace business.
Wow. And which year was it?
This would be 2014.
2014, 10 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
And Flippa at that time, I'm trying to think about it. Like Flippa was well known at that time at the digital. So what was the time around? Like Flippa was, how old was the Flippa at that time?
So it depends on the month that I listed it, but Flippa was founded in June 2009. So we are about to have our
5 years.
15th anniversary. We're a few days out from our 15th anniversary.
Mm.
And most people, of course, have still never heard of Flippa.
Right.
And that's because if you think about it, this concept of selling digital assets and online businesses and this concept of investing in them is actually still relatively nascent. Most people don't think, oh, I can buy a blog and earn income and generate a return on my investment. Most people don't think that of an app. Most people don't think that of a SaaS business. They think it's still left over for the world of venture capital, for the world of fast growth. But in fact, as you and I both know, there's now this world of people trading digital assets and doing so
Right.
frenetically. So back then, the business would have been 1 year old.
Wow. And as you said that it was not something which would have gone to the moon and all. Did you face some challenges while trying to sell that through that? And what were those challenges? Like if it can be time saver for someone else or some
Yes.
lessons learned.
So, watching your opening snippet for your show, um, yeah, there's a lot of tough times in that period, right? And I try to talk to our staff at Flipper about this because if you've never sold a business, you don't know what the entrepreneur's going through when they're trying to do that. And
Right.
it doesn't matter if the business is in wonderful shape or less good shape, the emotions are all the same. I've built this thing. I want to sell this thing. Is there a buyer for this thing?
Mm.
And so I would say that, the experience was difficult because, like any investor, they're attempting to pick holes in your business so that they can understand what its true and fair market value is and what opportunities there are in the event that they were to acquire it.
Mm.
And so it's challenging. That experience is challenging. We need to respect how challenging that experience is. And it was challenging for me too, Sahil. So I had a business. I believed that the 100,000 odd users around Australia was worth something. I believed the fact that we weren't spending dollars on marketing and we were, winning predominantly free traffic at the time was going to be worth something. And I believed that the fact that we had generated nearly $1 million in revenue annually was going to be worth something. But ultimately, the business wasn't profitable because anything I earned, I threw back into the business. The Flippa customers at the time were assessing the business on its profitability. And so that was challenging emotionally because, there's no strategic buyer for a company like that at that stage. Or at least there is now, I should say. But back then, 10 years ago, there's no one who says, I'll go and buy this marketplace for specialty food operating digitally. I guess the short answer is it's emotionally tiring. It's you take a very healthy ego check.
Right.
But now the good news is I get to witness great entrepreneurs and online business owners all over the world buy and sell and tell their stories. And their stories are far more interesting than mine.
Yeah, you might have got already thick skin after seeing all this, so many transactions that's happening in on Flippa every day. I'm curious, how many transactions that happen that you have seen like every month on an average that happens on Flippa?
Yeah, so we sell around 1,000 to 1,200 a month.
Wow. And how
And
many
of course,
postings?
how many new? How many
How many
postings?
like new listed postings that happens every month on an average?
2,300 to 2,500, depending on the month.
2,300 to 2,500, and out of them you're saying successful are 1,000, 1,200, so half of them
Yeah,
almost.
it's like if you take the entire conversion rate across a year, you're looking at around 50%. I mean, that, it's like 48 or 51, depends on what month and year, but it's around about 50% of the assets listed ultimately find a new home. Now, of course, there's lots of factors in that. So, given we are a marketplace, you can find some very niche businesses which are less likely to find a home. And you can find some outstanding businesses that match the mandates of so many buyers around the world that they very quickly find a home.
Right.
And so what we look at is we look at quality. And quality is a function of so many different variables. But one of the variables is age. So does the business have longevity? One of the businesses is growth. So is the business actually growing? A declining business is hard to sell. And that can be tricky in a market like right now, Sahil, because you might have heard of the helpful content update, which is Google's latest algorithm change,
Right.
representative of their September and March updates. Well, as I just said, growing businesses look good on paper. When Google smashes you and your traffic starts to dip substantially, all of a sudden you might not be a growing business anymore. So there's lots of variables in all of this. But what we try to do is look at it from the perspective of buyer intent. So what are buyers looking for today? And what businesses match what buyers are looking for? And how do we facilitate that match in the most efficient way possible? And now we have kind of two parts of our marketplace. We have the self-service side, which is typically going to be, sub six figure. And then we have brokers. And the brokers are there to help deals happen faster and more efficiently for bigger deals. Because as the digital world has evolved, so too has the Flippa universe.
Right.
And so we're routinely doing $10 million deals, $5 million deals, $1 million deals. And so given we have the largest strategic investor base in the world,
Right.
and we have the most efficient way to match those strategic investors to businesses, we have to think about how you match and also how you score an asset. So as those matches become more likely to end up in deals done.
And what's the maximum deal you have seen happen on Flippa? Like, what's the highest one, higher transaction?
35 million.
35 million. Wow, that's amazing. So I'm assuming Flippa might have already crossed their $1 billion mark or half a billion total transactions.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And what's the? You said that some businesses are easy to sell, or they have more homes. Any weirdest business model that you have seen that got posted, and you were like, "Who's gonna buy this?" And you got also in question mark mode.
So I wouldn't say weird. I'd say interesting. So, maybe we'll talk about some businesses that are listed right now for the fun of it, because people might find that fun. So there's a business listed right now called Geometry Spot, geometryspot.com. Now, Geometry Spot is a 16-year-old founder. So he's 16 years
Wow.
old.
Mhm.
And it's a bit cheeky, Sahil. So Geometry Spot looks like a blog about geometry. So you can read, all about an isosceles triangle. And so it
Okay.
looks like a blog.
Right.
And so if your parents say to you, "What are you doing right now?" You say you're doing your mathematics homework.
Right.
But there's a little link in the right-hand side. And if you click that link, it's a gaming database.
Wow. Somebody's
And
super
so
smart.
and so then you can play games on this thing called Geometry Spot. And when your parents or your teacher walks back into the room, you can flick back to the information about geometry. So it's a bit cheeky, but he's amassed, hundreds of millions of page views over just a few years. So that's an interesting one. I think it's very cheeky. He's 16 years old. You got to love the hustle.
How much is
There's
generating?
What's that?
How much is it generating? Like if it's published, the numbers might be up on the
Yeah,
website.
It's if I remember correctly, it's doing like $500,000.
Wow. And how
And
big is the team size and all that with that business? Just one person?
yeah. So I love one of the reasons I love Flipper, and it's been a big part of my career now, and it's taken a lot of hustle from everyone on our team to get to this point. But one of the things I love is how many fantastically smart business owners we come into contact with every day.
Right.
And that's the joy of the job, actually.
Mm.
I'll give you another one, which I really like, and it's not weird, but it's a beautiful niche. And it's called maharaniweddings.com.
Okay.
And of course, it's about Indian brides or
Right.
about to become Indian brides, researching weddings, understanding venues, booking um, booking resorts and setting
Yeah.
up their weddings. And I love that because Indians are very passionate about weddings.
Hmm.
It's a big industry.
Right.
Their client base is both the end customer as well as the resort and or hotel and or convention center or wherever the wedding might be hosted. And it's got a massive community around it of people who have loved their
Mm.
experiences using the site and the product. So that's a very different example to Geometry Spot, but
Right.
I absolutely love just seeing how people apply their passions, turn it into entrepreneurial endeavors, and then create these great businesses, regardless of size, that ultimately go on to be worth something for the new buyer and the investor.
Absolutely. Love it. And as Flippa is global now, so any particular country that you have seen that most transactions are happening in that, like whether it's US or
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a boring answer. I mean, the US is the biggest market by a long way. Um,
Mm.
Interestingly enough, the American buyers will buy from anywhere. So 67% of transactions are cross border.
Mm.
And that predominantly is not all the time, of course, but predominantly an American buyer buying an asset from somewhere else. So an American buyer buying from a Canadian entrepreneur,
Right.
buying from an Indian entrepreneur, buying from an Australian entrepreneur, buying from a German entrepreneur. It really is global. And
Love it.
that's the funnest part of it. It's also the most difficult part of running our company because we
Right.
have a very distributed team all over the
Mm.
world. We have customers all over the world, culturally, we have this thing called the deal room.
Mhm.
And in the deal room is where a buyer inquires about a potential investment in a business. And
Mm.
so I'm selling Maharani weddings, and I
Right.
could be receiving an inquiry from a Canadian, an Indian,
Right.
a German, a Swede, um, someone from Singapore. Like, it's just so global and broad that not only is it 24/7, but you see lots of cultural dynamics play out on the platform as well. So
Right.
from a CEO standpoint, it's very tricky,
Mhm.
but it's humbling because you've got customers all over the world who all obviously deserve the same level of respect and opportunity to invest.
Right.
And then the realities play out. Some people have more money than others, and some
Right.
people are more sophisticated than others. And so the art of the negotiation considers not only the cash that you have, but also the way in which you communicate with the prospect.
Right. Right. Makes sense. I- So total number, if I ask you about total number of searches or keyword searches, I was on your platform and I was doing my keyword search on, like, I'm into coaching. I was trying to find something on coaching. I didn't find, it was more of blogs, YouTube and SaaS thing, all that. So how many total keyword searches that happened in a month? Have you do you guys track that?
Yeah, and this is the best question. Like, I'm so happy you asked this question because um, by the time that this episode is live, Sahil, we will have launched our new data insights product.
Okay.
And the data insights product will give you real live search data among lots of other statistics to understand, this world of buying and selling. And so the short answer to your question is yes. So I'm on the new product right now. I'm happy to share my screen, but I'm not sure that will screw you up. Um, so in
Mhm.
the last 7 days, there have been 1,188 searches, keyword searches on Flippa for blog. So that's people looking to acquire a blog. And they want to buy a blog because of all of the assets,
Right.
a good quality blog is still the most passive income stream. You've
Wow.
got predominantly free traffic from Google.
Yeah.
You've got multiple ways you can make money. The Amazon Associates program, which is Amazon's affiliate um, platform. You have Mediavine and Ezoic. You have Google AdSense. Of course, you can sell direct ads. So there's lots of ways. So that's a really popular and common one. But something like
Mhm.
AI. So that's people looking for assets that are for
Right.
sale, where the entrepreneur has stated that the asset, a big component of the asset's revenue generation is a function of its AI. So
Mm.
there have been 695 keyword searches on Flippa in the last 7 days for AI.
How many you said? 900?
695. Now,
695.
what is really interesting is I'm doing this live right now. When I change this to be last 12 months, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
AI falls down the ranking because, of course, AI wasn't quite as frothy, for want of a better description, as it is right now. But to give you some context, there's been 25,427 searches, keyword searches on Flippa in the last 12 months for AI. But
Wow.
that's not anywhere near as popular as travel as a category. So travel as a category has had 35,166
If you
searches.
have to say top five, what are the top fives?
Yep. Blog, number one.
Okay.
AdSense, number two. Shopify, number three. Amazon, number four. Travel, number five.
YouTube didn't make to the list?
Nope.
Huh. Okay.
YouTube is one, two,
Is it in
three,
top 15 at least?
six,
Top 10,
seven,
15?
eight. Number eight.
Top 10. Hmm.
And YouTube had 27,537 searches in the last 12 months.
Interesting. Blog is at the top in 2024. I'm trying to see that.
Yeah, I mean,
Most
you know,
we, yeah, we talk about reels and all that short form content, but the written content is or reading content is still at the top.
still at the top.
That's interesting.
Very interesting, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought like now people are more viewers, watchers, who scrollers, that people love to watch the stuff rather than read something. So that's interesting to know.
I think the thing about blog is two parts. One, still the most passive way to make money if it's an established
Right.
blog.
Mm.
Secondly, it's a great bolt on. So it's not that people necessarily see it as a great standalone business, but it's a great bolt on. So if you're an e-commerce operator and you're an e-commerce operator in the baby niche,
Mhm.
and you can find a blog which is targeting, mums and dads and families,
Right.
then that's a really great bolt on. You get to um, benefit from the free traffic. You're less likely to need to pay Google and or Facebook and or TikTok to acquire new customers. So a lot of people will look for blogs for that context as well.
Mm. Ah, cool. And with the you mentioned about AI and all. So how do you see flipping digital assets? You think how will it change with AI? Do you think any pros and cons with that?
Yeah, substantial benefits. Um, so if you think about the traditional broker approach to selling a business, clearly a lot of it is dependent on the broker's network
Mhm.
and the broker's work ethic.
Mm.
So this is tricky because if you're a business owner and you are contracting with a broker to represent your business, they could be a great salesperson, but ultimately their ability to sell and represent your business will come down to the size of their own buyer network
Right.
and their work ethic.
Mm.
How actively how active are they? Do they pursue buyers? Do they go and find new buyers? Do they find alternative pathways to new buyers? With AI, you can match programmatically. And so you
Mm.
can look for intent signals that give you a good sense of whether a buyer is going to be interested in an asset. And you can then use standard comms mechanisms like text message, email, notifications, etc., to communicate with those buyers at scale in a way that a broker could never achieve. And so we do 475,000 programmatic matches per week.
Mm.
And that's AI. So we have two graph neural networks, one sitting on the buy side, one sitting on the sell side. Each of those graph neural networks is a combination of clusters. And so if you and I are sitting next to each other in one graph neural network as buyers, it means that Flippa has figured out that we have similar interests.
Mm.
We have a similar approach to buying. But the assets that you have looked at, I might not have seen. But because we are so similar to each other within the cluster, Flippa can programmatically notify me of assets that you have liked and make an assumption, very good assumption,
Right.
that my intent is going to be similar to your intent.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think AI is very beneficial for M&A because ultimately it comes down to best match.
Yeah. True. It's gonna save a lot of human efforts in that, and wow, amazing.
So what our brokers do is obviously they still work with the business owner to understand fair market value,
Right.
work with the business owner to merchandise the asset, albeit AI is very helpful with that, by the way. So when you throw lots of data at
Mm.
AI, so you say, here are 500 Shopify assets.
Right.
And of all those 500 Shopify assets, here's their average order value, here's their refund rate, here's their growth rate, here's their industry, here's their location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you then throw the new asset at it too and say to the AI, now write a description for this business, positioning it for sale, and providing comps and benchmarks
Mm.
based on the data set provided. the AI is exceptionally adept at doing that, and we do that too. Of course, there's still a broker to review that and check for inaccuracies and or
Right.
intricacies, but it's helpful there. And so then they'll basically hit the match button, and it's crazy efficient to
Right.
provide brokers with an ability to match at scale in a way that no other broker can do on earth.
Right. Right. With full precision and accuracy, it will be. So that makes a lot different picture. So on your searches, usually, do you have more buyers or do you have more sellers that thing happens? I don't know if you have quantified that.
Yeah, way more buyers.
Way more buyers.
Yeah. And the reason is, remember that when you're running a company, you're pretty busy.
Right.
And so you tend to only have one thing going at a time. There are some really prolific entrepreneurs who own, whatever, 5 or 10 assets. And they've got little teams or hubs or clusters of people running those assets. But that's uncommon.
Mm.
Whereas an investor, there's lots of people all over the world who want to invest in a business. They either want to invest in a business and take a passive stake, or they want to invest in a business to operate the business.
Mm.
And there's a lot of those people. And
Are
so
mostly beginners? Have you seen?
what's that
As in
sort
like
of
most of them are like beginner people, or they are like seasoned entrepreneurs and all already having 5 stem businesses.
Yeah, so it's a really important thing. So yes, most are beginners,
Mm.
but buying power
Of
are
course.
fewer experienced players. So this is a tricky one because beginners always wonder why
Right.
they miss out on good deals. They miss out on good deals because there are, instead of millions, we have millions of buyers.
Mm.
There are tens of thousands of very seasoned
Mm.
investors. And they
Mm.
move quickly. They know how to negotiate. They understand the metrics that matter to them and the metrics that matter to the entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs actually far prefer to sell to someone who understands their business than someone says, "Oh, SaaS is really cool. I really want to buy a SaaS company."
Mm.
Which, by the way, happens a lot. Like, "Oh my God, SaaS is the easiest business to run in the world." Well, in fact, it's not.
Mm.
And so a buyer and investor who is seasoned actually tends to have a better relationship with an entrepreneur, and those deals get done a bit better. So if you think about buying power, you're talking about, for 10,000 seasoned investors, they would have the buying power of 1 million first-time buyers.
Mm. Mm. And when you have beginners, do you also see a pattern of like some people are like making it this kind of doubling their money, 2xing, 3xing their money? They put the money to buy, make an investment, and then get rich quick thing. Have you seen that pattern, or does it happen?
Yeah, it's a good point. So as you know, kind of in the big leagues, there's two approaches here. There's kind of, I guess, a more traditional private equity approach, where you buy, you improve, and ultimately you find a pathway to exit, be it, find liquidity in the public markets and or sell. There's also the buy and hold model, like the kind of Berkshire Hathaway approach, or what a lot of roll-ups are doing these days, where they buy, operate, and hold forever.
Hmm.
And small investors are actually very similar. So there's a guy, actually, he's in Toronto, Sahil.
Mhm.
Um, his name is Jeff Weiner, and he different Jeff Weiner to the ex-LinkedIn CEO.
Yeah, yeah.
And he started out with one asset. I think he now owns like 20 assets, and he's 250% up on his invested dollar.
Wow.
So I think they're relatively small. Each asset may have cost him between $10,000 and $50,000. So his investment, might have been between $500 and $1 million,
Mm.
500,000 and $1 million. But he's now up 250% on his invested dollar. And I haven't spoken to him for a while, I must admit. But last time I spoke to him, he had no intention of selling. It's very much
Mm.
buy, get operational improvement, grow and hold.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good, crazy return, man. That's like people are. I don't know if that guy is treating it as a real estate. Buy a property, you just fix it, do the modifications and all, reno stuff, and
But I
sell it.
should say, and I know this is, this is about entrepreneurship and finding a pathway to get where you want. But I should say, this is not a get rich quick
Yeah.
scheme. So
Mm,
when you buy a business, let's say you buy a business for $100,000, um, that business is probably going to trade at a 3 times net profit multiple. Of course, different business models and monetization types are different. So, don't hold me to that because that's a
yeah.
blended multiple. But regardless, that means that business was turning over $33,000 net profit, right?
Mm,
Um, so if it's turning over $33,000 net profit, that means it's a 3-year payback. And so you can improve it and make it better and therefore speed up your payback window. But if you run it the same way as the prior business owner, that's a 3-year return on investment. The good news about that is in year 4, assuming you run it the same way and assuming you haven't improved it, it's now pure profit and pure cash flow.
right.
But that's not get rich quick. That's 3 years, 4 years,
Yeah.
5 years. And so people need to think about it a little bit like real estate, but quicker.
Mm, makes sense. Gotcha. Cool, man. Sorry, we went over the time. I didn't look at the clock. I was enjoying this conversation. Uh, so, what's the final any message for our buddy entrepreneurs out there before we wrap this up? You have seen
Yeah, of
so many
course.
businesses, so
Keep building. Good luck growing. And if you find yourself pursuing an exit, the best time to do that is when things were going well. And so think
yeah,
about that. That's when buyers love you. That's when investors want your business. Think about that in the context of finding a pathway to an exit. And thank you for having me, Sahil.
amazing, amazing. Cool. So that was Blake Hutchinson who gave all this information about when you want to also get into that buying or selling your business, want to get more information, go to flippa.com. Is there any other resource, Blake, other than that? If somebody
Flipper.com,
wants to reach it out.
yeah, Flipper.com is very good. Thanks for that. You can also find me on LinkedIn and connect for anyone listening. And I'm happy to help you out or connect you with a member of our team.
Awesome. So thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll be coming up with another episode very soon. Till then, take care. Bye. Very soon.